Welcome to the video. I'm Melissa. I write books. None of these books I'm going to be talking about are craft books. One of them is. I lied. One of them is, and the rest of them are not, because the point of this video is not to give you craft book recommendations. So if that's what you're looking for, continue watching because I think this is helpful. So I have been a person who has said many times, and maybe I should stop saying this because I don't know how true it is, that I don't like to learn. And I think what I've meant when I've said I don't like to learn is that craft books don't resonate with me. A lot of like how-to YouTube videos or podcasts, like they're helpful to a certain extent, but that's not where I think I've learned the most about writing. I do think that my skill has really developed, and it's something I'm looking to develop more in the new year. And that does include working on craft books, but I think a lot of times craft books feel very prescriptive and also just like not helpful to me. It's often like things I already feel like I know intrinsically just are not very helpful to me. Mostly because it makes me get in my head, because it's like, okay, well, if this book tells me that I need to, like, let's say Story Genius, which I know is a book that's helped a lot of people, but like it's very like you have to know everything about the story and the motivation, like, or the character and the motivation. Like that is the most important thing, period, point blank, done, right? And a lot of books aren't prescriptive, but a lot of them like present themselves as like, this is the way to write a book. And I think that the true way to learn how to write a book is to write a book. But as I was learning things in these craft books, and I started to feel like, I feel like I already know this. And then I was thinking about it the other day and I was like, how do I already know this? When did I learn this? Because it's not something I learned in school. I did not go to a school for creative writing. Also, the first two books I wrote without an outline structure. I just like wrote. Just seat on my pants. I had a bit of an outline, but it came from me. It did not really come from anyone else. So I was kind of reflecting on this. And I think that the reason I intrinsically knew things about story structure and things about character and plot was because I've read a lot of books in a really interesting way. I think I read books normally, but also the way I consume content is very like analytical. And I take in things that really nobody needed. For example, I read the Harry Potter series as most people did, but I read it 71 times in a row, which is insane. I just like read it. When I would finish the seventh book, I would go back to the first book. And there's something about reading something a lot, as like I started in second grade reading that book and then like all the way through. I mean, I still reread it sometimes just for like nostalgia. Something about that like ingrained in me this sort of like these kind of plot structures and these kind of tropes and these kind like, this is what a book is because I've read it so many times, right? I was thinking about this more recently and about like, I think that reading a lot, and whenever I go back to reading, it makes me a better writer. Like I didn't read a ton this year. I mean, I read 70 books, but like 80% of those books I read at the beginning of the year, and I've been struggling with this revision for most of the year. And I just have not been reading a lot. And then a couple weeks ago, I picked up a book again, and like within reading 2 chapters of that book, I've like fixed half of the problems with my revision. Like the books I'm going to recommend to you are probably not going to be helpful to you. Like I'm not saying that you should read them. They're more so like, this is what this book taught me about writing. I'm going to start with a craft book. The only craft book that I ever found helpful was Save the Cat Writes a Novel. And it's not because of the book. It's because of the plot structure. And honestly, I don't even think it's specifically the plot structure that like everybody needs to use, but it's one that resonated with me. And honestly, I think any plot structure would have resonated with me. This is just the first one I found. It lays it out with examples that I was familiar with, and it has like a nice beat sheet. So if you're looking for just a basic outline and a basic craft book, I will recommend Save the Cat Writes a Novel. I'm going to say some of these taught me things because they did them in a way that I didn't like. And that's not to say that the books are bad or that the authors are bad. It's just like reading that showed me, okay, I don't want to do that specific thing because I didn't like it, right? The first example is not that case. So I'm holding the second book because I lent the first book to somebody, but The Housemaid by Frida McFadden, I write thrillers. So I read it at a very specific time as I was revising The Wedding Season, which is the book I'm querying right now. And I have this issue or just this tendency to really bloat the beginning of a book because I'm really focused on character development and I want to make sure everything's set up so it all has a good emotional payoff, which is something I'm glad I do. But reading The Housemaid showed me like, okay, you can just make bad things happen right away in a thriller. Like you can just put a body on the page. You can just lock somebody in a closet. Like you can just drug somebody on the street. Me personally in real life cannot, but like you can still have character development, and it's like it's not taboo to like actually put a body on the page early in the book, because I was kind of like, well, I want to build up to the violence and I want to build up to the big events, and that's true, but that doesn't mean that you can't put things early in the book to entice people. And like reading that book was such a revelation for me of like, okay, I can just kill somebody early in this book. Like it's okay. And that actually is probably important in a thriller so that people are like interested in what's going on, right? Not every thriller is like that, but it really helped me frame and like amp up the pacing in my openings. A book that has helped me with tone in thrillers, a lot of this is very thriller specific now that I think about it, is The Girl Who Could Move Shit with Her Mind. I read this a few years ago, but it's a thriller. I really love this series, actually. I don't know if the next book's ever coming out, but there's 4 of them right now. And it's this girl with like telekinetic power. So it's technically sci-fi, but it reads very like real world thriller. And the tone of this book is very crass and very like, there's a lot of swearing, obviously, but also there's like really intense things happening. Like there's this whole government conspiracy, and there's like, she's framed for a murder essentially. And there's all this stuff going on. All of this darkness was happening with like a very light and comedic tone. And that was a big turning point for me of like, oh, I could do that. Like I could write thrillers that don't feel so heavy, you know, because reading this is fun, which is weird for the things that are happening in it. And I think a lot of like traditional thrillers have a very dark tone because of what's going on, which makes sense. But also it wasn't just that this had a light tone, but it also like I was laughing, but then I was also crying. Like you can have this blend of tone of like comedy, but also like it actually does have a deep impact. And I think that's something that a lot of thrillers struggle with in this genre of like comedic thriller. A lot of them, some of them have felt very, oh, this is funny. And then you don't really feel the emotional impact of what's going on. But I think this did a really good job of both. And that's like the tone I'm striving for. This whole series is gold. Next, I'm going to talk about my favorite author. I think I can confidently say she's my favorite author. So Abby Jimenez is one of them. And then Lynette Noni. I've talked about Lynette Noni a lot on this channel, not very recently. She's the author of the Prison Healer trilogy. Also, there's a duology that's like a kind of like a sci-fi shatter me dystopia moment, which is so good. And then there's this like 5-book middle grade young adult fantasy series as well. And what Lynette Noni has showed me is how to nail a plot structure in such a good way. Because I think sometimes as artists and authors, we can come up to a plot structure or a structure of any kind and be like, no, I don't want to do that because I don't want my book to feel like everybody else's. Like, I don't want my book to feel the same as everyone's. And so I'm rebelling against that. But when I read Lynette Noni books, you can tell that she knows plot structure so well because she hits every beat. She hits every beat of the plot structure, but she does it in a way where it's still surprising. You still feel the emotional impact. Like me as a writer, like I know Save the Cat, and I can feel when like, oh, we're about to get to the midpoint. Oh, we're about to get to the opening image. Oh, we're about to get to these things. But she does it in a way where it's still surprising and it's still interesting, and it never feels like I know what's coming. Like I can sense what's coming. I don't know exactly what it is. And when it happens, it's like, that's exactly what I wanted to happen. You know how some books like open up the potential for something to happen, and then you get excited that it might, and then it never does. And it's like, you set that up, girl. Like, I wanted that to happen. And maybe it's just what I personally like in reading, but everything I want to happen in a Lynette Noni book happens every time. And it's all in different ways, but I'm like, you always makes the right choice. And I think that was really freeing for me to see, like, no, I can write in a plot structure, but also still have it be surprising and interesting and compelling. She's a little, I'll tell you this, she's a little cheesy because she's more on the younger side of young adult. But this book, the 3rd book of this book's, so the next book I have on here is The Cellar by Natasha Preston. Is this book the epitome of literature? No. Is it a slay? Yes. Okay. So this book was originally a Wattpad sensation, and then it got so popular on Wattpad that it became a traditionally published book. And this author is now like, she has a new book every year. Like, she is doing the thing. And what this book showed me is not necessarily anything that's in the pages, but it's the like idea that like, you never know where your publishing journey is going to go. And you never know when success is going to find you or what project you might have done in the past that will bring you success now. And I don't know Natasha's full journey, but like seeing this book on my shelf and seeing like every time I go into Barnes and Noble, I'm like, oh yeah, she's like still pumping out books. Like her books are still in the featured section. It's like she went from like Wattpad to a traditional, like, and that brought her to a traditional deal. I'm taking a different path. I think, I don't know, who knows, but it's less about anything in this book. It's more about like, you never know what you like, the impact of what you're doing right now and where that can take you, you know? Okay. Now I'm going to have 2 examples of books that showed me what I don't want to do. So the first one is Keeper of the Lost Cities. I love this series. It is a middle grade series that, let me see when this first book was published. 2013, this book was published. This year, the year of our Lord, 2024, I'm going to tell you what the book number is, and you're going to say, what? 9.5 came out. 9.5. So this book went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8.5, 9, 9.5. Should this book be 9 books? No. The first, I would say 5 books were so good and so clean and so nicely plotted, and we had payoff for things and the cliffhangers and the reveals and everything was really strong. And I read it in high school, but I was still like in younger middle grade books at the time. I was reading Harry Potter 70 times, you know. And then it just started to become like we're introducing so many things and nothing is getting answered, and that we're not answering any questions. We're just like opening new doors. And it's like, now maybe it's just because I have to wait every year for a new one, but I'm like, I don't even know. Like, I am a full grown 24-year-old woman who has read this book series multiple times, and I write books, and I cannot for the life of me figure out what is going on. And these books are targeted to like 12-year-olds. I'm like, if I can't even like figure out what's going on because there's like 8 different groups of bad guys, and then like there's so much going on, and there's everybody has powers, and now we're like introducing all these new powers. Like, there's just so much going on. And I think what this has showed me as a writer is like to not bite off more than I can chew, and to know when to end something. I think that this is the case of something where like this series is just going on for too long. It's just very confusing, and it lost sight of what it's about. Like, this book at its core is not about what book 9.5 is about. I'll be honest. And maybe she'll pull it together in the 10th book. But at this point, I'm so confused about what's going on that it's very difficult to like ground myself. And I'm a 24-year-old woman who's read this book series multiple times. Like, I don't. Another book that has taught me things that I do not want to replicate is Crescent City 3, House of Flame and Shadow. And what this book has taught me is to remember what the readers want. I don't know what the readers want because I don't have any readers, but I know what the expectations of your genre and your readers are, and don't lose sight of that. This book lost sight of what it was about. The people who read SJM books, specifically me, like, yes, they want fantasy. Yes, they want world building, but mostly they're here for the character relationships and the romance. Like, girl, you started romantasy, like, or you didn't start it, but like, if you look up romantasy, ACOTAR is the first thing that's going to show up. And like, technically this isn't the same series, but you know what? Like, readers are coming here for the character relationships, the moments, like the drama and the like heart of like, we're looking for reunions. We're looking for hugs. Like, some people are looking for smexy time as well. I am here. I just want people to hug and be happy. Or actually, I don't even want them to be happy. I want them to be sad, but I want them to like comfort each other and talk about it. Like, this book, what are we doing? We're going all these, there's 1,700 POVs. We're talking about nothing. We're going into a tunnel and hearing a story for 45 pages. When we get a reunion, she did something where she separated 2 characters for like almost the equivalent of an entire book. One of them is being actively tortured. And then when they reunite, it's like, hey, what? Anyway, so, and as a reader, I was like, girl, I was here for the reunion. Like, that's the whole reason I bought this book. So what are we doing? It's really just shown me to like keep in mind, like, what are people coming to this book for? How am I marketing myself and my book, and what are people coming to me for? Yes, like branching out and developing the world, developing characters, all that stuff. But like, remember where you came from and what people want from you. And also pacing, because girl, it was not that serious. Kingdom of Ash by the same author, beautifully paced, beautifully written, had a similar amount of POVs, but everything came together because it was focused on what people wanted. And there was healthy, like good world building and good plot happening, but it just, and so it's just kind of like this warning of like, don't get too big for your britches. Like even if you become world famous Sarah J Maas levels of fame, like listen to critique and keep sight of what's important. Okay. What else do I have? I have like 3 other books. I don't know if I'm going to include them. The Blonde Identity is similar to The Girl Who Can Move Shit with Her Mind in terms of tone. It is like, it's a thriller. It's very funny. It's very like flirty and funny and romance and haha and kiki and like, let's kick our feet in the sand. But also like, I'm crying. And I think I'm actually probably going to use this book as a comp for The Gas Station, which is a thriller I'm working on right now. And this is the kind of book I want to write. I think mine will be a little bit more serious than this one, but like romance, drama, tension, drama, kicking our feet, hugging, crying, screaming, throwing up, loving each other. I have other books here, but I think that like that kind of covers the gambit. Like these 2 books taught me similar things to other books, so I'm not going to. I've already been talking for 22 minutes. Of course I have. So those are some books that, I mean, I recommend them all. I don't necessarily think these books are going to make you a better writer, but these are what these books taught me. And so I encourage you to take a look at your shelf and like, as you're reading, after you're done reading, reflect on what did this teach me? How can I use this author's work and experience and expertise and help make me a better writer, right? So yeah, that's the end of this video. Thanks so much for watching. I hope your January is going great. I will see you so very soon. In the meantime, comment down below either a book that's helped you or a book emoji, and I'll see you next time.